It's
Hey,
winter.
that would be a very true statement.
We had a little bit of winter here. We had our
Did you get a little
rains.
snow?
No. Well, winter for us is rain. We get rain
Uh,
in February and March, and then that's it. That's all we're allowed is February and March, and then we send it to you, and it turns into
into
hellacious
snow.
snow. Yeah,
Well, I've actually been seeing mudslide.
yeah. Not just south of us, down at Pacific Palisades. Yeah. So he's Dewey Freeman. I'm Mark Sylvester. This is the Elder Council,
Good morning.
and
Good morning.
I'm I've been struggling with something all week, Doc, and I don't know if others are struggling with this. Do you remember our first couple of months of COVID? So we're now talking almost 5 years ago.
Yeah,
And
like that. Yeah.
right, and when you talked to people, you checked in with them in a way we had not done for a long time. We say, "Hey, how you doing? How are you?" Because people were not okay. Whether they maybe not directly, there was maybe indirect. Uh, in some cases, they knew someone who'd gotten sick. It was not good, and there was a feeling of helplessness. I think because we didn't have vaccines yet. All we could do was hunker down. Things were locked up, all the things, and no one had ever experienced anything like that.
Yeah, I remember that. And part of what went through my mind was not only did we not have vaccines, we didn't have information.
Right, right,
It was like,
right,
what is this?
right,
Is it going to be like a bad cold or flu, or is everyone going to get it and die?
right,
And
right,
we had no solid information.
right. And that didn't alleviate for a long time. Right. It
True.
was months on months on months. It finally things turned around, but it was also, do you remember how we were kind of glued, in my case, glued to the news? Like, is there any news? Every day there
Hmm.
was updates, and I remember every day checking into the John Hopkins website to see, how this thing had spread and how bad it had gotten. And maybe 4 or 5 months into it, people would ask, "How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing?"
Hmm.
And I came up with this thing I said all the time: Is it okay to be okay?
What answer did you get?
From people, most of the time, yeah, it's okay. And it's like there was a certain sense that this sense of people wanting to commiserate.
Mm.
And I was like, "Hey, I'm okay." Like, I started cooking for people who couldn't get out to the grocery store, and the restaurants were all closed, and I could go out. I was an essential worker because I was cooking. It gave me something to do and to be helpful for friends and neighbors. And I was busy, and we figured out a way to pivot our business. And we were just, and I think it's because I got to figure out how far along the optimism line you get before your rose colored glasses kick in.
Before they call you Pollyanna Sylvester, is
Yeah,
that what you're
yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah, sure. And so then I would say, is it okay to be okay? Because I was, and I didn't have direct, I didn't we didn't lose anybody. We didn't, there were different issues with people being sick, but not that. So is it okay to be okay? So do you remember how that felt?
Hmm.
I'm feeling that right now.
Mm. You mean with the whole political
Yeah,
situation and
yeah.
hmm
I'm feeling all almost the same exact feeling. The one of this is bigger than me. This is a sense of helplessness, a sense of, what we can go hold a sign on the corner. I mean, there's protests everywhere. I can don't know how long it's going to last. I'm waiting to hear good news, and it's not. It's only bad news. And yet, um, run a comedy school. We're doing that. We're laughing. We're having fun, and I feel a little guilty is the wrong word. Um, but I'm not commiserating with it. I, and that's where I'm in that. Is it okay to be okay? And
hmm
and I don't. I thought we might talk about that a little bit because I don't know. Our audience. We're not political in the kinds of things we talk about, but I think the for the first time in my adult life, that world, let's call it that world, has impacted my world in a
hmm
way
hmm
that is obvious and you can almost touch it. And the and wanting and I want to stay inside.
Got it. And is staying, I actually have a lot of thoughts and but just to check in with you though, is what's the reason that you want to stay inside? Is it to
Um,
stay away from hearing about stuff or
uh, Stay inside is metaphorical because it's
mm,
beautiful here. It's I like to get out and play pickleball and be outside. It's beautiful. Stay inside. I'm not inclined to want to go protest. And there are people in my universe who are, hey, are you going to here's a way for you to get involved. Did you to get onto that call? Are you going to be going to this rally? Are you going to, it's like, no, no, I'm not, no. And I don't, I just, I don't like doing that kind of thing. I never have. Um, but it's, it's all weird right now.
let me just ask you one other question. When you say it's all weird, what feels weird?
So I'll be very, very specific. So this week, without hyperbole, I can say tens of thousands of people have had their lives turned upside down.
Absolutely.
Tens of thousands of people, straight up, all the ones who lost their jobs with no notice, or the ones who are thinking they're going to lose their job, or the people who are at the other end of the supply chain from aid from us that are all
hmm
over the world. Um, Someone I had on my show who's got 30 people in a facility in Austin that helps low income people. The money just stopped instantly.
Yeah,
She's
like
what
literally,
like literally instantly.
yeah.
So there are tens of thousands of people, much like again back to my COVID example, whose
Mm,
lives have been changed in very
hmm
significant
hmm
ways. Yet I'm in my year to write, which is what I'm doing now every Sunday, my resolution, the thing I'm
hmm
doing, I'm writing, and I want to write about I am writing about things in life that have been positive that I have a very good feeling about, and I'm enjoying,
hmm
I'm getting good, but I feel is it feels a little inappropriate to be joyful. So back to my is it okay to be okay? Like it came, I've been talking about this all week with Kimberly. Uh, I get the sense that someone, and no, this hasn't happened, but someone would accuse me of being tone deaf.
Mm,
And so it's had a little bit of a I won't say paralyzing because that's too strong a word, but
mhm.
clearly something that's on my mind, which is why it might be on other people's mind. And we that's what our show's about, is talking about the things that are hard to talk about.
Right. So let me share my perspective and actually truly a way to at least possibly look at this. And this, I actually began figuring this perspective out. And I don't remember the date of the shootings at Columbine. I could look it up easily enough. But do you remember the shootings at
Sure,
Columbine High School?
absolutely.
And that was actually the first mass shooting, at least that I know of, that actually has kicked off a lot of other issues. Um, and part of what I had to figure out and work with, and part of the reason for that I'm saying this is because I was involved. I was a second tier of therapists. There was a therapist that actually went into the school, talked to the teachers, talked to the students, worked with the parents, all of those. And then my job was to debrief those therapists. And there were a number of us doing that. So there was a tiered layer because the therapist would end up being traumatized at the end of the day. And I had to come up with a distinction of and a way to hold all of that. And the two distinctions, the two pieces, and I wish I would have can say I woke up in the one morning and went ta-da, but this is a piece I put together after listening to a whole lot of other pieces, so and other people. So this is not all mine. But there's a difference between the perspective of the world's a horrible place, the world will never be okay again, and have sort of that global perspective, or the world is okay and really bad things happen in the world.
Mm.
And again, going back to Columbine, when people were able to hold the perspective of, yeah, in general, the world's okay. And some really bad things happen in the world. And even when I say that to people now, and what's reminding me of this, I actually, a good friend of mine who has two daughters called me just um, and said, I need to help with a dad from a dad perspective. And we had like a 15-minute call. And I explained this to him. And he goes, thank God I never would have gotten there myself, at least
Mm.
that quickly. If we hold the perspective that everything is horrible and we're going down the tubes and all of those things, then that's a really heavy duty perspective to hold. If we hold the perspective of really bad things are happening and in general the world is an okay place to be, we can right this ship, I mean those kind of perspectives, then that changes what happens inside of us. And what it actually, part of the reason I'm saying this is because I think what you're saying is yeah, horrible things are happening. And in general, the world's an okay place to be.
Yes.
And um,
And it feels like if we have that bell curve with, to your point
yeah,
of,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right, if we had that bell curve, I'm somewhere over here, and it feels like the majority right now is way all over here.
Well, certainly a lot of people are way over there.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, it's a skewed bell curve where the mean has shifted. But I think that you're right. And what's interesting about that to me is that when we go into that place of the world's not okay, which actually is part of what this administration wants us to believe. Because if we go into that place, we will freeze, we will feel helpless, we will
Mm,
go, and it sends us into that sympathetic part of our nervous system, or what's called the dorsal vagal part of our nervous system, um, which is freeze, faint, sleep, or dissociate. If we go that far into that, then we become useless essentially in creating any change. If we can stay even in the sympathetic part, which is called a bigger, many people call it fight or flight, but the more general perspective of that is mobilization, then we can, that's our part of helping respond. And so the idea of going, yeah, really horrible things happen, and in general, the world's okay, that allows us to mobilize, which I do think that there needs to be mobilization. Um, so before I continue rambling on, what are your thoughts with that? And I do want to share one other piece.
yeah. I think it's the mobilization part that is uh, that's challenging. Now, if it's mobilization, meaning I don't stop, I keep doing the things I'm doing and adding my positive energy out there. Um, you know, I'm working on a book. I got another book, and
Mm-hmm.
I, been spending every waking hour on this book, and I'm very excited about it and the potential for it and the rings of activity around that. So I'm by
Right.
myself am as mobilized as I've been in several years, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a very much a flow state. So I am mobilized, but I'm not mobilized towards doing anything about the external world and the external situation. That makes sense.
Well, I think that one, the kinds of things that you write about can be really helpful to people. That's number one. But number two, I also think that there's some things that we can do that are very helpful. And we don't necessarily have to go carry a sign. Like actually yesterday I called both senators from my state and the congresswoman who represents the county that I live in. And all of that took maybe 45 minutes. I actually got to speak to a spokesperson of the congresswoman from this area. And those kinds of calls are incredibly important. And at least for me, I mean, one, it was very emotionally moving. to actually have somebody listen to me that is saying, yeah, your input is helpful. Um, and she even explained how to do a call. Um, because that's the place that we actually can have some level of input. Those are the people who actually can do something. Um, and what I'll also say is if somebody has the energy and the wherewithal and will go protest, then do that. Because I think that all of us, like, mobilization is a healing process.
Hmm.
And however we mobilize is is a very individual uh, an individual choice. It's the actually doing nothing that is really damaging. And it was the same. I mean, I know that you shared what you did during COVID. I mean, actually, because of where I live, and most people I'm working with are outside, and I'm or the cabin that I work with in our therapy cabin, it's well ventilated. I changed very little over over COVID and that whole process. And interestingly enough, didn't ended up not getting COVID. So, um, but there we do need a process of mobilization to help us move literally. I mean, we always talk metaphorically. Well, I'm going to move through this, or I'm going to. It's like
Hmm.
mobilization is a process of moving through something.
So now I'm speaking for the person who's listening. What are some activation strategies to get us to move
Well, I think
for
one of the
those who maybe
pieces,
are feeling maybe stuck or paralyzed?
yeah, well, one is actually what I was actually told yesterday was that calls to Congress and senators are very powerful processes. Um, and um, so that's one piece. Another piece is putting something on your social media if you feel so moved. Another piece um, is um, having discussions with friends that, and I'm not talking about confrontations and screaming at each other. Um, and even if I'm talking about social media, I'm not talking about going on there and writing, the biggest confrontational blah, blah, blah. What I'm talking about is stating your opinion and because people listen to other people. Um, so it's that kind of stuff. Letters are actually really valuable to Congress people. And here's the other part that I think is really, really important. And this is it's not just the Congress people we need to communicate with, it's the governors of our state, it's the our state reps. Those are the people that are really, like, governors have an enormous amount of power. So, and when we come in and this is actually what I learned yesterday is making a statement of what you're wanting and then making a suggestion toward how to get there, those are very helpful things. And it's not it, it's not just like when I put something on social media, I go, oh yeah, well, the people, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because the people who see my social media are more generally, you know, they're saying similar things that I'm saying. Um, so that kind of mobilization is a really, really important piece.
I as I'm thinking about all those things, I find myself have we had the we've talked about yes and
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
we know it's like
Totally.
I look at you, I hear what you say, it affects me in some way, I add something to that and I make a comment and I react and I have some reaction to that and we yes and. But I'm feeling very much in a yes but mode,
Okay.
right?
Go for it.
Yeah, well it's yes, but there's no way I'm posting on social media. Like I'm
Okay.
just not gonna like no. Because I just don't need to start anything there, and I don't have. I feel so. I'm yes butting, and I'm noticing that I'm yes butting, and I teach people not to do that. I mean, it's I don't want to live in a yes but world. I want to prefer to live in a yes and world.
Well, let me yes and that. I don't think you have to. And I also don't think that I'll say three or four things. When I post on social media, what I post is something really positive. I mean,
Yeah.
look at how you can grow. Look, what can you do with your family? Um, let's let's hold a line on being honest. Let's, I mean, that kind of stuff. I don't post, you know, go stick it where the sun doesn't shine and F you to everybody. That because all that does is create this back and forth thing that's crazy. It's like when we post something positive, that helps people. When we
So
post,
yeah, I I do I am doing that. Yeah.
yeah. So
My
see,
writing, mostly it's my writing and those kinds of
so
things. So
it's your writing, it's your positive attitude, it's your perspective that yeah, we don't we don't have to just collapse. It's like, yeah, this is, there are people out there that really understand us. And many of your writings have to do with how can you move forward with X, Y, and Z? What kind of story, what kind of problems did you overcome and everything come out okay? Um, how can you look forward to connecting with certain people and in certain ways and really support each other? How can you have fun and laugh? And how can you, um, how can you still have really good relationships with your friends? And those kinds of things. And I also think that um, that's the stuff that, so that's the social media part. But the other piece that I would really say is even talking about the concept of the world's okay and bad things happen is uplifting to people.
mm,
And
mm.
and when I'm doing that, I'm not trying to trash somebody. I'm not saying because you believe this or because you believe that or because I'm not saying that at all. And the same thing. I mean, if we talk to those people that we have elected and support them, that's a really positive, powerful thing that we can walk away from and go, have a level of satisfaction. So, and I hear you when you say, yeah, I'm not going to get into, a fist fight on social media. And I mean that metaphorically.
Sure.
That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, you know, even something like, especially like where you're living, it's like, we did a really good job at, thank you for all of the first responders that helped with the fires and the floods. Thank you for
Yeah,
the
very much.
community,
Yeah.
thank you for the community effort to, you know, help blank, blank, blank. Thank you for that. Because what that is saying is the world's really okay. And yeah, some really bad things are happening.
Yeah, I hadn't even in my statements hadn't considered the thousands of lives
Mhm.
affected by the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire in Altadena. My family's from Altadena back in the day, Pasadena, Altadena area.
Mhm.
And that's where my uncle lived. And so I don't remember exactly where because I was so young when I visited there.
Mhm.
But looking at the drone footage over the Palisades we drive Pacific Coast Highway every few weeks. We go down to Santa Monica a lot. That's just it's as depressing. So, and I think that it's the again that it feels overwhelming. So that the
Mhm.
sensation of it is, and I think about those people whose lives again changed forever. And it just maybe it feels like the volume on the changed forever knob in life is kind of cranked up everywhere right now.
That I think that's an accurate statement. And even saying, yeah, the, even writing a piece of the volumes up on the Change Forever piece right now is everyone's talking about that. And it's true. And but what's not said is it's changed forever and let's help this turn into something really positive.
Mm.
Like one of the pieces, and this was a long, long, long time ago in my career. Um, and I was probably early 30s and um, was working with people who had been sexually assaulted. And the tendency in my career is that I tend to get people who have been to one, two, sometimes seven or eight other therapists, and then they end up with me. I very rarely end up with being the first therapist that someone's seen. And was working with a person who had been sexually assaulted. And the message they got was from this therapist is, oh, your life's changed forever. And that part was devastating to the person
Mm.
versus the message of this happened to you and it's incredibly, incredibly, my heart goes out to you and you're going to be okay is It's like you will be okay. You can get through this. This can make you stronger. This can, and not, that's not exactly where you start, but it's like that's the energy that I hold, and and a huge part of that is from personal experience. And actually, I know this is the case for you too, Mark, is you and I have both had incredible losses, some incredible tragedies in our lives, incredible. And I mean, and just for the listeners, I mean, you and I have shared so much, and not just in the time we've known each other, but also we've shared when we were 20 and when we were 17 and when we were 31 and ended a marriage, or I mean those sorts of things. And it's like that, knowing that we can go through incredibly, sometimes even what feels like horrible times, and they are, and we can come out okay. We can come out stronger. Can come out more grounded. We can come out um, um, actually with more insight, and
It has me, and I appreciate you bringing that around. What two visuals came to mind. One was, remember the Summer of Love in San Francisco in the late 60s, Haight Ashbury
yeah,
and
like
the
69 or 70, something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah. And the so the kids in the audience are going, go look it up. Uh the but the National Guard had descended on Golden Gate Park in San
Right,
Francisco,
right, right,
right?
right.
So we had the National Guard. So we had our military going against the people who were peacefully protesting. And the image that I have in my mind, I'll never forget, was the line of the National Guard, and one of our, flower children type just takes a flower and literally puts it in the gun barrel.
Hmm.
Remember that
Hmm.
image? I mean, that was pretty widely
Yes.
circulated. So that is that message of hope and peace. And then the other was Jesse Jackson, who was, in his heyday, a civil rights activist. And I
Hmm.
think of the plight of minorities being, just say the plight of minorities, don't have to say anything more than that, and fighting for those rights. And what did he say? He said, keep hope alive.
Yes.
And what you're talking about now is that sense of hope and helping us, me specifically, but hopefully our listener, think back to those really, really hard times, seriously hard times we had in life, and now we're on the other side of it. So to your point of, if everything's bad, we wouldn't have come out of it. So we did come out of
Right.
it. We can keep hope alive and put a flower in that gun barrel.
Well, exactly. And the people who led that, I mean, and I remember that image like so well, and Martin Luther King's speech of "I have a dream," and I mean, we can even go all the way back to the Anne Frank diaries. It's like we can go through horribly difficult times and come out okay. And one of the pieces that people ask me, and I know they ask you this too, Mark, is when people, like when I am leading like huge groups, like with Man Uncivilized, for instance, it's like I can clearly say anything that happens here, I can handle. And part of what happens, and people say, well, how do you know that? And what I say is because I have been places where I've gotten shot at. I have been places where I've been incredibly hurt physically. I've been at places where I've had unbelievable loss. And um, and that's actually what gives us strength. And um, it's not the shutting down.
Mm,
And we don't have to. I mean, the flower in the gun barrel or Martin Luther King, they're not saying that they're going to go attack everybody. They're saying the opposite. And it's like, that's that's the mobilization part. And in all honesty, for you and for people that is, you do that on a minute to minute basis. And you have done that with me more than once.
mm.
And, you know, where it's like, yes, no big deal. We can get through this, or we have time, or and that's what we all have our own gift to bring to this.
On that note, my friend, let's put a pin in it. I love you.
I love you too
I hope
tremendously,
that
my man.
people listen to this and mobilize, whatever that
Beautiful.
means.
Exactly.
Whatever that means. Love you.
Exactly. Love you too, man.